Hey, what's up, Hognose Pods? Thanks so much for hopping back on to the Hognose One podcast. So this particular interview is one I did with a very good friend of mine named Perry from New Mexico. Excellent herper, one of the most dedicated and serious collectors that I've ever known or seen. Really hammered down on certain species that he wanted to work with for a long time. He was working with what was formerly classified as the New Mexico milk snake. I think they've been termed Western milk snake now. I've heard it pronounced two different ways, Selenops or Chilenops, I heard one guy say one time, and Lamprepeltis triangulum is the specific epithet, and then obviously the subspecies name there at the end. But I think they're just kind of Lamprepeltis triangulum possibly now, or they may have that Selenops epithet towards the end there. But he's worked with banded geckos before. Texas banded geckos do cross over into New Mexico. One of the times early on, I went with Perry out to find some banded geckos. We got permits. We had some specific areas we wanted to kind of hammer down in. And man, that dude really showed me how to find a lot of these things and a lot of the species that I really wanted to catch and work with. Taught me how to catch collared lizards. Taught me how to catch tiger salamander larvae. And so really a good all-around guy. Just got to be friends with him for a period of, 7 or 8 years. Purchased a lot of the animals that he would collect and breed and work those into my project, or found homes or people that wanted to work with specific projects. But just really a tremendous resource, total field collector. Those are always the guys that I really love to brush shoulders with, because they are the eyes and ears that get to see a lot of stuff. And Perry is no insignificant individual when it comes to seeing hognose in their natural habitat. So hop along here with me, join in, listen really well. Some of the audio is a little light in some areas, probably due to location and communication options with a lot of the devices we were using. But nonetheless, I think it'll be a fun and interesting topic for you to listen in here to hear what Perry's got to say about hognose snakes in New Mexico. I was going to tell you, it was an interesting deal. I had a girl that messaged me on Facebook, and she said, hey, there's a guy in New Mexico that joined this group, and he's got a hognose. It was a normal looking hognose, and there was nothing wrong with it, but it had a black head, like somebody had spray painted the face, the neck, and the head. But I could tell it was a color, mutation or whatever. But have you ever seen a hognose over there that was unusual looking at all?
I have not. Everything's been pretty normal. I mean, I've actually, what I thought was the most weird thing is I've caught some Mexican, how they're a little bit different than Mexican hognoses?
Yep.
I've caught some of those down by Carlsbad.
Yep.
That were like that. You get into a lot of them. You get over south of Lord, there's a lot of them like that.
Oh, yeah. Got a friend that's from Wilcox, and they're covered up over there, in Arizona.
They're Mexican hognoses.
Yep, they're Mexican hognose over there. How many hognose do you think you've found, through the years around there? 50, 100, 200?
Oh, I've probably caught 100, 140. There were some summers where I would catch 10 or 15 hognoses in my yard. They were just everywhere. They would just start popping out after rain. I hatched a bunch of eggs.
How many was the most you ever got, like in a day or at a single time?
Probably about 6. There's certain places I know in the sand dunes right below the cap rock, get the rain just right, then it warms up, rain at night, the next morning. There's a certain temperature it's got to get. It's 4 of them in about a mile of driving.
What was the biggest hognose you ever saw?
20 inches, 22 inches, something like that. The big round,
They're pretty good size over here, and I don't know what the difference is. I don't know if it's the, prey items they eat or what, but it's not uncommon. In a given year, if we're out looking around for them, we might find 2 or 3 that are, 26, 30 inches long. I mean, they're big for a hognose.
I know I've never caught 30.
I'm just curious if, New Mexico populations aren't just a smaller bodied snake as opposed to the ones over here. And I don't know why that is.
that one time that I, like I said, pulled up to a gate in the sand dunes, big female, coiled up, similar to why a prairie rattler would. Callus various. She's coiled up there. I thought it was a prairie rattler. There's a lot of prairies out there too. That's the way they coil up. Wait for a mouse to come by or whatever. Picked her up, was back out there exactly the same time, probably 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe 9:30. It had rained that night. Sure enough, I pulled up to that gate and I look out there and there's another hognose coiled up right where she was. Tracked her down. I guess maybe she was ready to be bred, and he was right there waiting, trying to figure out where she went. His scent trail was in the exact same spot where she was. I've actually did that one other time where I saw one crossing the road. She was warming up. She could see me coming in the pickup down the road. She was trying to get away, so I jumped out. And I think it was like 2 days later. It rained a little bit more the night before again. And right where I had made a marker rock right where I caught that snake. And sure enough, there was another one that was laying right where I caught her. He was stretched out. He wasn't coiled up. He had trailed her to that point. Just didn't know what to do. Just like, they do trail them.
I was coming down a road one time, and there's a real soft, sandy area at the bottom of this. They kind of plowed through a lake bed, and it would always get silty sand. So I had to kind of hit the gas a little bit in my two-wheel drive truck to get across it. It was maybe 60, 80 feet long. But if you stopped, you'd sink. I was coming through there, and there was one little part, like a 10-foot section of hardpan. And as I was rolling up to it, there are two smashed hognose snakes, like 24-inch females, right side by side. And that's exactly what they were doing. One of them scent trailed the other one that had gotten hit and got hit also. And it was just such a bummer. You see males hit fairly often, but these big females, these girthy females, that was just a kick in the gut. I think maybe it was JD and Rick mentioned that they were up on Ponderosa one night and found a hognose crossing the road, and it was the only one they'd ever seen after dark that was just kind of out in the middle of that's a little black top in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a hognose out after dark here.
It's pretty rare.
You would know the answer to this. I had Mescalero Sands, basically at Sand Ranch in Caprock area, come through there. I worked there for 6 years, and I never saw red hognose. Have you ever seen anything that was red in that sandy country out there?
I have not.
You remember one time you brought me a hognose snake, and you said you found it in the Capitan Mountains, but you said it was a real rare locality. You'd never seen a hognose before or after that from that locale. How many thousand feet in elevation do you think that animal may have been?
That was down at the bottom of the mountain.
Yeah, I remember
That's where it was.
Saying it was real gravelly, the area, and sinkholes and stuff, and rocky.
Sandy, like a lot of places I found hognoses.
Yeah, I remember it had a different look. It was kind of a gray with a darker, almost like a Mexican hognose, but I mean, you're way away from the Mexican population, but
yeah.
That dark saddle, dark head mask, should have kept it. It was a little female. Yeah, I think at that time, I wasn't, hadn't really ventured into locale-specific stuff. Have you ever found a hognose in a rattlesnake den?
I never have. Well, did I ever tell you about the eastern hognose that I caught on the Canadian River in New Mexico?
It was the one up by Las Vegas or something?
Yeah, it was by Tucumcari. Logan, you know where Logan is? On the Canadian River?
Yep.
Ute Lake. Yeah, it was by that. It was toward Texas line, but it was in New Mexico, and I didn't know what the hell the damn thing was. And that thing was like 30 inches long, and he was hissing a flare like a cobra.
Yep.
And was chasing me and hissing. And I didn't know what the hell it was. Of course, I caught him with my tongs, and I was sketching rattlesnakes. And I put him in a separate container, took him home, and looked him up to see what he was. And it was out of the area that they, on the map where I was looking at my reptile books and stuff, I was probably 20 miles away from the edge of that, which was to the east.
What color was he?
He was kind of olive green color.
Okay, interesting.
Almost kind of a gray color. And I don't remember if his belly was black. I was thinking about when you were talking about black bellies. And I don't remember his belly being solid black. He was different. I mean, I didn't even know he was a hognose for a while. I thought, what the hell is that thing? That's the only one I've ever caught.
See, my buddy found one well, you know where Dalhart is, not far from there, on Rita Blanca Creek, which is, it starts in New Mexico, I guess, over there around Clayton. It comes right through Dalhart and makes a draw right there, and they've got a lake, they made it kind of like a country club. He found one that was gray with those dark black neck patches, I guess, and solid white belly. One of the first ones that had been found in that area. It was gray, man. I mean, it was like a pale concrete gray color with those black blotches.
Interesting.
And kind of small. But north of there, which was kind of odd, in the sand country, one of his customers, he was a barber up there, one of his customers found some that were green, eastern hogs. I think those are the ones he told me that he tried to feed them mice, like pet shop mice, and they ate mammals, which is rare for an eastern hog. I only have heard of one other instance where somebody found one, and it was closer to Las Vegas, and it was in the Canadian River drainage, and it had gone to get a drink, I guess, and was frozen in the ice. Like half of its body was out of the water and half of it was in, and it was about 20 inches, and whoever found it, took pictures. And
cousin that used to work on the Connor Bench, which is 100 sections that it was to the east of Las Vegas. He's probably the one that took that picture, because I remember him having some kind of snake he found frozen in the ice. And on that ranch was the headwaters of the Canadian River where it originated. Remember in that area, there's little pools that had perch. And we'd go fishing in these little pools around there. It's all super rocky, unbelievable rocky. And these pools would have leopard frogs.
Yep.
And I figured if there was anything that didn't eat mice, they would eat those leopard frogs. They were in all sizes. They were quite abundant. Even though you may have to go a half a mile in between potholes that had water. There's cattails too. There's cattails, and there's these little puddles that were clear water that had never went dry, and they had perch fishing.
It's not too far of a stretch. I mean, if they're in Dalhart, County, right there on the state line, they're found in Oldham County, which is in Texas, and the Canadian River around Adrian and Vega. They're bound to be in the Canadian River in New Mexico.
They got to, yeah, because there's food there for them.
Oh, yeah.
I can see them eating those leopard frogs for sure, because they're in all sizes, little bitty ones, big ones, not so big that are full grown.
Wow, just absolutely fascinating. His account was just really cool. I think at the time of the recording, I was not aware that any had been documented in New Mexico, but a quick search of iNaturalist revealed that an animal was seen, looks like on a roadway over there. I think it's Union County, but I'm not exactly sure. Not far from the state line, but definitely within the border of New Mexico. Really cool picture to the individual that saw that. Thanks so much for that, man. That really is a great contribution. You can tell by the comment stream on that particular picture that folks are really excited to see that animal there, just a definite range extension. But if you think about it, where Perry was referring to was around Logan, which is even further to the west of the animal pictured on iNaturalist. The one that was frozen in the ice that I was talking about was from more than 20 years ago, and that one was probably another 60 miles further to the west. So I think that maybe the herpetological community that herps that area of northeastern New Mexico, maybe even in the Oklahoma Panhandle, the upper Texas Panhandle, even southwestern Kansas and southeastern Colorado. If you're in those areas, keep an eye out, especially in late spring if you've got good habitat. I know Black Mesa is over there in Oklahoma. It's the highest point in Oklahoma, and there's a lot of habitat that looks very similar to the Canadian River drainage that these are found in. So I hope, probably like you, that more will be found in the future. I did have a conversation with the late Charlie Painter, herpetologist for New Mexico, and at the time I visited with him about the eastern hognose in New Mexico, he was a little bit dismissive, wasn't really interested in investigating it. He said, yeah, there may be some rumors, there's nothing documented, nothing for sure. His interest was more in the dune sagebrush lizard in Eddy County, around the Jowl area, and a little bit, I think, south and west of Jowl in the sand dunes. Those are a very isolated population. There was a big controversy with oil and gas leases in that area and that very small species of lizard, and he kind of championed that pursuit. So the Eastern Hognose deal wasn't as high up on the priority list as I had hoped it would be, but I was just very interested in that. One other thing I always think about, if you've ever been to the Tucumcari area, there are red exposed Triassic aged soil there. A lot of what we also see in the Abilene area of Texas, Wichita Falls area of Texas, maybe even back around the Dickens area, which is east of Lubbock, about an hour. And in these areas, there's a lot of exposed fossils. There's all kinds of fossil beds. There are really cool finds that, people come across of, petrified wood and things like this. And I always wonder if, like the plains hognose that exist in that area, occasionally you can find some that have a really cool red background coloration or a really cool red blotch. I often wonder if the eastern hognose that are found in New Mexico might not have some of those colorations that are pretty cool. I've seen some orange coloration on eastern hognose in those Dockham Triassic age soils in some of the places in Texas that I mentioned. So yeah, just always wondering about easterns over there, what they have, what they look like, what actually exists. So I really hope that herpers are able to see some of that and document more specimens. It's just absolutely fascinating. Now back to Perry's talk about the plains hognose snake. His locality, which is in the central part along the Pecos River, has beautiful, beautiful, beautiful yellow background animals with really dark mask and dark blotches, solid black bellies, almost looks like an anaconda belly if you are familiar with the anaconda trait in hognose snakes. Really, really beautiful animals. You can look in the morph guide, and I've got that locality, some of the animals that are pictured in the morph guide that are labeled New Mexico actually came from Perry. Some of the ones he collected, some of the ones he bred. Just a phenomenal locality. So neat area. But I did think it was interesting how he said he'd never seen one over 24 inches. They're fat-bodied. They're really cool snakes over there, but it makes you wonder why in the world they're not as big as the ones we see here on the South Plains that might be, 500, 600 grams and pushing 30 inches, 33 inches, something like this. I do think it has to do with their prey items, but we'll cover that in another vid. As always, thanks for listening to the rant, and we will catch you on the flip side.